World War II is one of the most thoroughly documented conflicts in history, with its major campaigns, leaders, and turning points etched into every textbook. Yet the most extraordinary and overlooked details, the ones that reveal the true strangeness of human experience during the war, are rarely mentioned. In this video, we uncover 12 bizarre, documented facts most people ignore. A bear officially enlisted as a corporal in the Polish forces. A single individual who endured both atomic bombings, mysterious glowing orbs shadowing aircraft over Europe, the United States' attempt to deploy incendiary bats as weapons, and much more. These are not folklore. They are verified historical reality. Which of these 12 intrigues you most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you value history presented with depth, authenticity, and the unexpected stories textbooks consistently omit, please subscribe. We continue to explore these hidden chapters every week. 1. The man who survived both atomic bombs. On August 6, 1945, Tsutomu Yamaguchi, a 29-year-old marine engineer working for Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, was in Hiroshima on a business trip. At around 8:15 a.m., he was about 3 kilometers, roughly 1.8 miles, from ground zero when the U.S. dropped the first atomic bomb. Little boy. The flash blinded him temporarily, ruptured his eardrums, and caused severe burns on the left side of his body. Despite the chaos, he survived the initial blast and its aftermath, spending the night in an air raid shelter before making the grueling journey home to Nagasaki the next day. On August 9th, just 3 days later, Yamaguchi returned to work at his Nagasaki office. Around 11:02 a.m., while recounting his Hiroshima ordeal to skeptical colleagues, his boss even called the story crazy, the second bomb, Fat Man, detonated about 3 kilometers from his location. He endured another round of radiation exposure, burns, and sickness, yet lived on. Yamaguchi suffered long-term effects: hair loss, persistent burns, cataracts, and eventually stomach cancer, which caused his death at age 93 on January 4, 2010. He became an anti-nuclear advocate, speaking at the UN in 2006 and authoring books/songs about his experiences. The Japanese government officially recognized him as the only Niju Hibakusha, double survivor, in March 2009, though at least 160 others were affected by both bombings but not certified. This extraordinary coincidence highlights the random, terrifying cruelty of the war's end. Surviving one atomic attack was miraculous. Surviving two defies belief. 2. Wojtek the Bear. The Polish Army's furry corporal. In 1942, Polish soldiers of the 22nd Artillery Supply Company, part of the 2nd Polish Corps, purchased a small Syrian brown bear cub from a young Iranian boy near the town of Hamadan for a few coins, some food, and a Swiss Army knife. They named him Wojtek, Polish for joyful warrior or smiling warrior. Wojtek quickly became the unit's mascot. He grew to over 6 feet tall and weighed nearly 500 pounds, yet remained gentle with his human companions. He learned to salute officers, wrestle playfully with soldiers, always letting them win, smoke cigarettes, which he would eat rather than inhale, drink beer from bottles, and march upright on his hind legs like a human. During the brutal Battle of Monte Cassino in Italy, May 1944, the unit needed to carry heavy crates of 25-pound artillery shells up steep mountain paths under fire. To bypass British transport regulations that prohibited animals, the soldiers officially enlisted Wojtek as a private in the Polish Army, complete with his own paybook, rank, serial number, and rations. On the battlefield, Wojtek carried crates of shells in his massive arms, walking upright between soldiers and supply trucks. His efforts boosted morale during one of the war's bloodiest campaigns. After Monte Cassino, the unit adopted a new emblem, a bear carrying an artillery shell. When the war ended, Wojtek was demobilized with his unit. He lived briefly in the Scottish borders, then was transferred to Edinburgh Zoo in November 1947, where he remained until his death on December 2, 1963, at age 21. Polish veterans visited him regularly, bringing cigarettes and beer as treats. Today, a bronze statue of Wojtek stands in Princes Street Gardens, Edinburgh, and another in Krakow, Poland. Wojtek's story is one of the war's most heartwarming and bizarre examples of companionship and ingenuity amid horror. Battle of Castle Itter, Americans and Germans team, up against the SS on May 5, 1945. 3 days before Germany's unconditional surrender, the Battle of Castle Itter became one of the strangest and least known engagements of the entire war. Located in the Austrian Tyrol near the Bavarian border, Schloss Itter, Castle Itter, had been converted by the Nazis into a luxury prison for high-profile French 5 IPs, including 2 former prime ministers, Édouard Daladier and Paul Reynaud, tennis star Jean Borotra, generals Maurice Gamelin and Maxime Weygand, trade union leader Léon Jouhaux, right-wing leader François de la Roque, and Marie-Agnès Caillot, the elder sister of Charles de Gaulle. As the war collapsed, the castle's SS guards fled, leaving the prisoners vulnerable to roving SS diehards determined to execute them rather than let them be liberated. The French prisoners, led by Reynaud and Daladier, took control of the castle and sent desperate messages for help. A small U.S. reconnaissance unit from the 12th Armored Division, about 14 American soldiers under Captain John C. Jack Lee, arrived first. They were soon joined by a most unlikely ally, Major Joseph Sepp Gangl, a Wehrmacht officer who had defected with about 20 of his men from the nearby town of Virgil. Gangl, disgusted by SS fanaticism and fearing for the prisoners' lives, offered his troops to fight alongside the Americans against their former comrades. The combined force, roughly 30 Americans and Germans, defended the castle against 100 to 150 Waffen-SS attackers armed with tanks, artillery, and machine guns. The battle lasted several hours. Gangl was killed by sniper fire while shielding Lee, and the defenders held out until reinforcements from the U.S. 36th Infantry Division arrived late in the afternoon, forcing the SS to retreat. This is the only documented instance in World War II where American and German soldiers fought side by side against other Germans. The French 5 VoIPs were safely liberated, and the event symbolized the war's chaotic final days when ideology collapsed and humanity briefly took precedence. 4. Pervitin. Nazi meth for super soldiers. In 1937, the Berlin-based Temmler Pharmaceutical Company synthesized methamphetamine and marketed it as Pervitin, a small white tablet touted as a miracle stimulant for alertness, productivity, and mood enhancement. Initially sold over the counter without prescription, it became wildly popular in civilian Germany for everything from long work shifts to partying, with aggressive advertising comparing it to coffee. By 1938 to 1939, the Wehrmacht, German Armed Forces, recognized its military potential. Dr. Otto F. Ranke, director of the Institute for Military Physiology in Berlin, conducted experiments on university students, concluding Pervitin allowed sustained performance without sleep, up to 36 to 50 hours. Ranke himself used it heavily, as revealed in his diaries and letters. During the 1939 invasion of Poland, and especially the 1940 Blitzkrieg into France, Pervitin was issued en masse. In April to May 1940 alone, over 35 million tablets, containing 3 milligrams methamphetamine each, were distributed to roughly 3 million troops. Soldiers often took 2 to 4 pills daily, sometimes more, enabling them to march, drive tanks, and fight for days with minimal rest, covering up to 22 miles per day in some units. Nicknames included Stuka tablets for Luftwaffe pilots, tank chocolate, or curing pills. The drug suppressed fatigue, hunger, and fear, contributing to the rapid, relentless pace of early Nazi victories. However, side effects were severe: addiction, paranoia, hallucinations, heart issues, and crashes after the high wore off. By 1941, civilian use was restricted to prescription only, and military distribution tightened, though some commanders ignored rules. Hitler himself received amphetamines and other drugs from his physician, Theodor Morell, though not primarily Pervitin. This state-sanctioned stimulant use, largely overlooked in standard histories, reveals how pharmacology helped fuel the early war machine at a massive human cost. 5. Foo Fighters. Mysterious glowing orbs chasing planes. From late 1944 through the end of the war, Allied air crews, particularly night fighter pilots from the U.S. Army Air Force's 415th Night Fighter Squadron in Europe, began reporting strange, unexplained phenomena. They described bright, glowing orbs or balls of light, usually orange, red, white, or green, appearing suddenly near their aircraft. These Foo Fighters, named after a Smokey Stover comic strip phrase, Foo, meaning mystery, would pace the planes at high speeds, sometimes following for miles, darting erratically, merging, splitting, or vanishing instantly. Reports came from both Allied and Axis pilots. They were seen over the Rhine Valley during bombing runs and in the Pacific Theater. Pilots described them as intelligent. They reacted to evasive maneuvers, approached formations but never attacked, and occasionally jammed radar or radio signals. Sizes ranged from a few feet to house-sized. Some glowed steadily, others pulsed or changed color. Theories at the time included secret German weapons, for example, experimental electromagnetic devices, or Foo as a code for Führerball. Fireball, St. Elmo's fire, atmospheric electricity, ball lightning, reflections from ice crystals, or even enemy flares. None fully explained the behavior, especially the apparent pursuit and intelligence. Post-war investigations by Project Blue Book, U.S. Air Force UFO study, and earlier secret reports classified most sightings as natural phenomena or misidentifications. But many pilots remained convinced they saw something unknown. The Foo Fighters represent one of the earliest widespread modern UFO encounters, decades before Roswell, and remain officially unexplained to this day. 6. Bat bombs, America's wildest idea. In early 1942, shortly after Pearl Harbor, dental surgeon Lytle S. Adams, a friend of First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, proposed an unconventional weapon to the U.S. government. Attach tiny incendiary bombs to Mexican free-tailed bats, freeze them into hibernation, and drop them from planes over Japanese cities at dawn. The bats would wake up mid-fall, fly to nearby wooden buildings, common in Japan, roost in attics and eaves, then detonate after a timed fuse, starting widespread fires. The idea was approved by the U.S. Army Air Forces and later managed by the Chemical Warfare Service. Adams' team collaborated with zoologists and explosives experts. They tested Mexican free-tailed bats, which could carry a 1-ounce napalm bomb, and developed a cardboard bat bomb container with 26 stacked trays. The bats were chilled to hibernation, loaded, and the container would open at altitude, releasing them. Initial tests at Carlsbad Army Airfield, New Mexico, went disastrously wrong. On one occasion in 1943, armed bats escaped, roosted in hangars and a general's car, and set them ablaze, destroying parts of the base. Despite setbacks, the project continued under code names Project X-Ray and Project XX. Estimates suggested 10 bats per building could start 180 to 200 fires per raid, more effective than conventional incendiaries. By 1944, after $2 million spent and hundreds of thousands of bats tested, the program was canceled. The Manhattan Project's atomic bomb took priority, and the bat idea was deemed too unpredictable. No bat bombs were ever used in combat. This bizarre, almost cartoonish plan shows how desperation and creativity collided in the search for victory. Yet it nearly burned down an American airfield instead of Tokyo. 7. Carrot vision propaganda. Hiding radar with a diet myth. During the Battle of Britain in 1940, German Luftwaffe pilots struggled to understand how RAF night fighters were intercepting them so effectively in the dark. The secret was Britain's new Airborne Interception Radar, AI radar, fitted to aircraft like the Bristol Beaufighter and Mosquito, allowing pilots to detect enemy bombers at night from miles away. To keep this technology hidden, British intelligence launched one of the war's most successful disinformation campaigns. They spread the rumor through newspapers, radio, posters, and even planted stories that RAF pilots' superior night vision came from eating massive quantities of carrots. The campaign centered on Wing Commander John "Cat's Eyes" Cunningham, a top night fighter ace credited with 20 kills. Propaganda claimed his success stemmed from a childhood love of carrots, which supposedly improved eyesight dramatically. Posters showed pilots munching carrots with slogans like "Carrots help you see in the blackout" and cartoons of rabbits, symbolizing good vision, aiding the war effort. The Ministry of Food and Air Ministry coordinated the effort. Carrot consumption was heavily promoted to civilians too, to justify increased production and mask radar's role. German intelligence partially bought the story. Some Luftwaffe reports mentioned carrot-enhanced British pilots, and the myth persisted long after the war. Many people still believe carrots significantly improve night vision, though they only help prevent deficiency-related blindness. This clever misdirection protected a key technological edge and became a textbook example of wartime propaganda turning a simple vegetable into a strategic weapon. 8. Operation Cornflakes. Fake mail to demoralize Germans. In late 1944, as Allied bombing intensified over Germany, the U.S. Office of Strategic Services, OSS, precursor to the CIA, launched Operation Cornflakes, a psychological warfare campaign designed to clog the German postal system and sow distrust. The name Cornflakes came from how the fake envelopes would scatter like cereal flakes after bomb drops. The plan targeted mail trains. Allied bombers would strike trains carrying civilian and military mail, then drop specially prepared sacks containing thousands of forged letters. These letters looked identical to genuine German post. Same paper, stamps, postmarks, and handwriting styles. Inside were anti-Nazi propaganda, subversive cartoons, defeatist rumors, fake death notices, or letters from concerned citizens criticizing the regime. Some included tiny timed incendiary devices that would ignite hours later, destroying mail offices and causing chaos. Over 96,000 forged letters were produced and dropped in targeted raids, mostly in southern Germany. The goal: overload the already strained Deutsche Post, delay legitimate mail, including military orders, and erode civilian morale by making people question official news and fear the government was hiding bad news. The operation ran from February 1945 until the war's end. It achieved partial success. Some mail disruptions occurred and propaganda reached recipients, but the incendiaries were unreliable and the psychological impact was limited amid the chaos of collapsing Nazi Germany. This odd low-tech sabotage shows how even the Postal Service became a battlefield in the final months, blending forgery, explosives, and mind games. 9. Night Witches, all-female Soviet bomber regiment. In October 1941, with the German invasion deep into Soviet territory, Joseph Stalin authorized the formation of 3 all-female aviation regiments: the 586th Fighter, 587, the Dive Bomber, and 588 the Night Bomber Regiment, under Major Marina Raskova, the famous Soviet Amelia Earhart. The 588T8, later redesignated the 46th Taman Guards Night Bomber Aviation Regiment, became legendary as the Night Witches, Nachthexen in German. These women, mostly in their late teens and early 20s, flew obsolete Polikarpov PO-2 biplanes, slow, maximum 94 miles per hour, wooden, open cockpit trainers originally used for crop dusting. To avoid radar detection, they shut off engines at high altitude, glided silently over German positions, and dropped bombs by hand from low level. The PO-2's wooden frame made them nearly invisible to radar, and the glide approach produced a soft whooshing sound Germans likened to broomsticks, hence the nickname Night Witches. They flew up to 18 sorties per night, navigating by starlight and handheld compasses, often in freezing conditions with no parachutes, to carry more bombs. The regiment completed over 23,000 sorties, dropped 3,000 tons of bombs, and disrupted German supply lines, airfields, and morale on the Eastern Front. They earned 23 Hero of the Soviet Union awards, the highest Soviet military honor, with pilots like Nadezhda Popova, 852 sorties, and Yevdokia Bershanskaya, commander, becoming icons. The Germans feared them so much they offered Iron Crosses for any night witch shot down. The regiment remained all-female through Japanese balloon bombs, Fugo, silent attacks on U.S. soil. In November 1944, Japan launched the world's first intercontinental weapon, the Fugo fire balloon program. Our poem program are over 9,300 hydrogen-filled paper balloons, each 33 feet in diameter, were released from Honshu, carrying two 33-pound incendiary bombs and one 26-pound high-explosive bomb. Designed to ride the jet stream discovered by Japanese meteorologist Wasaburo Oishi, they drifted 5,000 to 6,000 miles across the Pacific in 3 to 5 days, aiming to start forest fires in the U.S. West and Canada, disrupt timber production, and terrorize civilians. The balloons were remarkably low-tech. Sand ballast bags dropped automatically via altimeter fuses, and a simple barometric mechanism released bombs after the balloon reached altitude. About 300 to 1,000 reached North America, landing from Alaska to Mexico with clusters in Oregon, Washington, California, and Montana. Most caused no damage due to winter weather and remote forests, but on May 5, 1945, 6 people, 5 children, and a pregnant woman, on a picnic near Bly, Oregon, were killed when they touched a downed balloon bomb, the only combat deaths on the U.S. mainland during World War II. The U.S. government censored news to avoid panic and prevent Japan from knowing the program worked. The balloons continued until April 1945, when Japan ran out of resources. The Fugo campaign was a desperate, innovative failure, yet it marked the first successful transoceanic attack on American soil. 11. Vatican Ratlines, helping Nazis escape. Post-war. As the Third Reich collapsed in 1945, thousands of Nazi war criminals sought escape routes to avoid capture and trial. One of the most controversial and effective networks became known as the Ratlines, clandestine escape paths that funneled high-ranking SS officers, Gestapo agents, and collaborators to safety in South America, Spain, and the Middle East. A key hub was the Vatican in Rome. Certain Catholic clergy motivated by anti-communism, humanitarian claims, helping refugees flee Soviet occupation, or sympathy for the defeated Axis provided false baptismal certificates, Red Cross travel documents, and Vatican-issued identity papers under assumed names. Bishop Alois Hudal, rector of the German College in Rome and a known Nazi sympathizer, issued hundreds of these documents. Croatian priest Krunoslav Draganović ran the Croatian section, aiding Ustaše war criminals. Argentine President Juan Perón government welcomed many, providing visas through sympathetic diplomats. Notable escapees included Adolf Eichmann, architect of the Holocaust, fled to Argentina in 1950 under the alias Ricardo Clement. Josef Mengele, Auschwitz, Angel of Death, reached Argentina then Paraguay/Brazil. Franz Stangl, Treblinka Commandant, and Klaus Barbie, Gestapo, Butcher of Lyon. The Ratlines helped an estimated 5,000 to 9,000 Nazis and collaborators escape justice. Post-war investigations, including by Simon Wiesenthal and U.S. intelligence, revealed the Vatican's involvement, though the Holy See officially denied systematic aid. The Ratlines represent one of the darkest, most hidden postscripts to World War II, turning a place of refuge into a conduit for fugitives. 12. Reindeer in Nazi Arctic logistics. During the brutal Arctic campaigns on the Eastern Front, 1941 to 1944, particularly in northern Finland and Norway, Lapland region, the Wehrmacht faced extreme sub-zero temperatures, deep snow, and impassable terrain for horses and motorized vehicles. Traditional supply lines failed, horses froze or sank in snow, trucks stalled in blizzards. The Germans turned to local Sami herders and Finnish allies for a surprisingly effective solution: reindeer. These hardy Arctic animals, already used by indigenous Sami for centuries, could pull sleds loaded with supplies, ammunition, food, medical kits, over frozen tundra where no vehicle could go. A single reindeer could haul 100 to 150 kilograms, 220 to 330 pounds, for long distances in temperatures down to minus 40 degrees Celsius, minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, eating lichen from under the snow. German units formed reindeer companies, Rentierkompanien, requisitioning thousands of animals and hiring Sami drivers as auxiliaries. Reindeer were also used for reconnaissance patrols, casualty evacuation, and even as mounts in some cases. The animals proved far superior to horses in deep snow and cold, requiring less fodder and recovering quickly from exertion. The practice peaked during the 1944 to 1945 Lapland War, when Finland turned against Germany, with retreating German forces relying heavily on reindeer to escape Soviet advances. After the war, many reindeer were left behind or slaughtered, but the episode remains a forgotten footnote in the history of Arctic warfare, showing how even the Nazis adapted indigenous knowledge for survival in one of the war's harshest theaters. And there you have it, the most bizarre, overlooked details from World War II that textbooks conveniently skip. From a bear carrying ammo as a corporal, to explosive bats nearly burning down an American base, glowing orbs chasing planes, and even Nazis escaping through Vatican Ratlines. These stories show just how strange and human the war truly was. Which one left you the most stunned? The double atomic bomb survivor? The night witches gliding in silence? Or something else entirely? Drop your favorite or most shocking in the comments below. I read every single one and love hearing your thoughts. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden, weird side of history, the stuff most people never hear, please hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We uncover more untold bizarre stories from World War II, American history, and beyond every week. Thanks for watching Bizarre History, where the past gets stranger than you ever imagined. See you in the next one.